Okay, so get this. You guys sent in a ton of articles about Boeing, and let me tell you, it sounds like things are seriously going haywire over there.
Yeah, it's really a fascinating, if you can call it that, a fascinating situation developing at Boeing.
It's like a corporate thriller playing out in real time, complete with strikes, layoffs, and even whispers of Chapter 11.
Right, a lot of moving parts and not in a good way. What we're seeing is a perfect storm of challenges basically hitting them from all sides.
So strap in, everyone, because today we're doing a deep dive into the turbulence shaking this aviation giant.
It's a really good example of how even the biggest companies can stumble, when they're dealing with economic pressures, unhappy workers, and production issues all at the same time.
And we're not talking about small potatoes here, right? We're talking about the potential for 17,000 people losing their jobs. That's 17,000 lives impacted.
Absolutely, and we can't lose sight of the human cost. And then, of course, there's the strike by the IAM, the Machinists Union. They're demanding a 40% wage increase over the next 4 years.
40%, I mean, that sounds like a lot, right?
It's a big ask, no doubt. But I think to understand it, we have to zoom out a little. It's tempting to just see that number and think it's crazy, but you have to factor in things like inflation. The cost of everything has been going through the roof, and wages haven't really kept pace, especially for skilled workers in industries like aerospace.
So it's like, imagine trying to make ends meet, pay your bills, when the price of groceries, gas, everything keeps going up.
Exactly. And then you see these huge corporations making record profits, and it feels like, well, it makes that 40% seem a little less about getting ahead and more about just trying to keep your head above water.
Totally. And the fact that Boeing has a history of outsourcing jobs to places with lower wages, well, that probably doesn't sit well with the workers who are left here, right?
You're absolutely right to point that out. It feeds into this bigger narrative about fairness and who benefits from these global supply chains. But even beyond the optics, it creates a real challenge for Boeing when it comes to negotiating with these workers. They've got to find a way to bridge that trust gap, or this could drag on for a long time.
And it's not just the company and the union that are paying attention. Even the government is stepping in.
Oh, absolutely. Having Acting Labor Secretary Julie Su fly out to Seattle to try to help with these talks shows you how seriously the Biden administration is taking this. This isn't just a local labor dispute, it's a potential economic earthquake.
Okay, so we've got this major workforce issue brewing, but then, as if things couldn't get any worse, Boeing throws another log on the fire.
Right, because as if a strike wasn't enough, they decided to.
They're delaying the 777X again. And not just a little delay, we're talking a full year, pushing the whole thing back to 2026.
Yeah, a whole year. That puts them, let me see, 6 years behind schedule? I mean, how does that even happen?
6 years. It's like they're building a plane in slow motion. So for those of us who aren't aviation experts, what's the big deal with this 777X anyway?
Well, the 777X, see, this was supposed to be their crown jewel, Boeing's long-range
Your
workhorse.
golden goose.
Yeah, exactly. This wasn't just some bigger version of their old planes. It was supposed to have all this new technology, new engines that were more fuel efficient, lighter
So it
materials.
was going to save airlines money in the long run.
Exactly. Lower fuel costs, longer routes, all the things airlines are looking for. This plane was supposed to be the future of air travel.
The future, huh? And they're 6 years behind schedule. Ouch.
It really makes you wonder what's going on over there. And the thing is, this isn't just about a late delivery. This is about Boeing's ability to keep its promises, to deliver on its
It's
innovations.
about their reputation.
Exactly. And some major players in the airline industry are getting pretty antsy, especially Emirates.
Yeah, Emirates. They ordered 150 of these jets, like a massive order. And their president, Tim Clark, he did not mince words. He said they're having serious conversations with Boeing. What does that even mean? Is that corporate speak for, we're about to take our business elsewhere?
Well, put yourself in their shoes. Imagine you're running a global airline. You've bet big on this revolutionary plane. It's going to help you expand, cut costs, be more competitive.
And then it's delay after delay after delay.
Exactly. Year after year, the promises fall through. Emirates, like a lot of airlines, they depend on Boeing's reliability. So yeah, when Clark makes a statement like that, it's a clear sign that they're losing confidence. And what's even more concerning is he even mentioned Chapter 11.
Chapter 11. Okay, now you've got my attention. That sounds kind of scary. What would actually happen if a company as huge as Boeing actually went bankrupt?
Well, I mean, it wouldn't be pretty, but it's not necessarily the end of the line either.
Okay, so walk me through it. What does Chapter 11 actually mean?
So, Chapter 11, it's basically a way for a company to hit pause, you know? They get some breathing room to restructure their debt, try to negotiate with their creditors, and hopefully come up with a plan to stay afloat.
So like a timeout to regroup and try to salvage
Yeah,
things.
exactly, like a financial reset button, kind of. But, and this is a big but, for a company like Boeing, even entering into those Chapter 11 talks, it would send shockwaves through the entire industry.
Because they're such a big player.
Huge. I mean, think about it. They're a cornerstone of the global aviation industry. Airlines all over the world, they rely on Boeing's planes to operate. So if suddenly those deliveries dry up,
Chaos.
total chaos. And then what happens to ticket prices? Do they go up? What about the availability of flights? It's a ripple effect.
Okay, wow. So this isn't just about Boeing and their workers. This could impact, like, everyone who's ever flown on a plane.
It's true. We're talking about potentially higher ticket prices, fewer flights to choose from, and even job security for airline employees, not just at Boeing. It's a whole ecosystem built on this assumption that Boeing delivers.
This is where things get real, right? But how do they even get to this point? It feels like this slow-motion train wreck that's been years in the making.
Yeah, it's been a perfect storm of, well, not so perfect if you're Boeing. You've got to factor in the 737 AMAX crisis a few years back, those two tragic accidents, the grounding of their entire fleet for almost 2 years.
Right, and then nobody wanted to fly on those planes.
Exactly, and understandably so. That was a massive financial hit and a huge blow to their reputation. It takes a long time to rebuild trust after something like that.
Totally. And then the pandemic hit.
Oh man, the pandemic, talk about terrible timing. It was like pouring gasoline on a fire they were already struggling to put out.
The whole world shut down. Nobody was traveling.
And for Boeing, whose entire business model hinges on selling planes to airlines, well, that was devastating. Orders dried up overnight. They had to slash production, lay off thousands of workers. It really exposed how vulnerable they'd become.
So they were already weakened by the 737 MAX thing, and then the pandemic just blindsided them.
Right, like one thing after another. And as if that wasn't enough, then came the supply chain chaos that's still impacting, well, just about every industry, really.
It's like they're trying to climb out of a hole, and someone keeps throwing more dirt on top of them.
Basically. It's a tough spot to be in.
So with all that said, what's the outlook? Can Boeing actually pull out of this nosedive, or are we witnessing, like, the beginning of the end for them?
It's a tough one to call. I mean, they've got a lot of challenges right now.
Understatement of the year.
Yeah, no kidding. But on the other hand, it's Boeing. We're talking about a company with over 100 years of history, tons of resources, and a brand that's known around the world. So I don't think we can count them out just yet.
Yeah, this that whole too big to fail thing.
Yeah.
Right? But even if they don't completely go under, it seems like things could look a lot different for them going forward.
Oh, for sure. A lot hinges on whether they can address these immediate crises, you know? They've got to resolve that strike, and they've got to get the 777X back on track.
And they need to reassure their investors.
Big time. They've got to convince Wall Street that they have a plan to get back on solid financial footing.
So damage control is job number one.
Absolutely. But beyond that, I think they also need to do some serious soul searching. They need to adapt to this changing industry and maybe even rethink some of those outsourcing practices that led to this labor dispute in the first place.
So it's not just about fixing things in the short term. It's about learning from their mistakes and actually changing the way they do business.
Exactly. This could be a turning point, not just for Boeing, but for the way we think about labor, you know, globalization, and even the future of air travel itself.
Wow. When you put it that way, it makes you realize this whole Boeing situation is about so much more than just one company.
Right. It's a microcosm of these bigger challenges and choices that we're all facing.
It's wild. Okay, so on that note, let's wrap things up. This deep dive took us from picket lines to potential bankruptcy with a side of global economics.
And a little bit of existential crisis for the airline industry thrown in for good measure.
Why not? But hey, that's what these deep dives are all about, right? You never know what you're going to find when you start digging.
It's true. And sometimes you end up in deeper waters than you expected.
For sure.
Yeah.
But I think we circused with a better understanding of the currents shaping the world around us, and that's what matters.
I think so too.
So next time you're sitting at the airport waiting for your flight, take a minute to think about everything that goes into getting you off the ground.
Yeah, there are so many people and so many moving parts and sometimes a whole lot of drama.
More drama than we even realize.
Absolutely. But at the end of the day, it's all about the human stories. Those are the ones that really matter.
Couldn't agree more.